My name is Kayla, and my 15-year-old daughter, Madison, was in a 13-hour brain surgery in Boston, but not one person from my family called, texted, or even showed up. 3 days later, my father, Gregory, asked for $10,000 for my brother Tyler's engagement party at a luxury resort. I sent him exactly 1 cent with a note, then cut off every account I owned. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Welcome to Sibling Scars and Revenge. I'm out on the road today, and Kayla's story really has me reflecting on the true meaning of family loyalty. Where are you listening from, and what time is it? I'll read your comments once I pull over. But let's get back to that sterile hospital waiting room. The smell of a hospital is something you can never truly scrub off. It is a sterile, chemical sharpness that coats the back of your throat and clings to your clothes like a second skin. For 13 hours, that smell was my entire world. I sat in a hard, plastic chair in the neurological waiting room, my hands clenched so tightly my knuckles were bone white. My daughter, my brave 15-year-old Madison, was behind those double doors having a life-altering procedure. I had messaged the family group chat the night before, giving them every detail, the time, the duration, and the risks. I did not ask for money or even for them to drive me. I just asked for them to keep her in their thoughts. The replies were a masterclass in indifference. My mother, Patricia, sent a prayer emoji and to let us know how it goes. My brother, Tyler, gave it a simple thumbs up reaction. No one called. No one came to sit in the chair next to mine. By noon, the jittery, acidic dread of the unknown was carving a hole in my stomach. I checked my phone every 5 minutes, willing it to light up with a message from my dad or my mom, but there was only silence. While I was buying a stale muffin in the cafeteria, just to have something to do with my hands, I saw it. A post from my brother's fiancée, Destiny. She had posted a selfie with Tyler and my parents at a high-end rooftop bar downtown. They were clinking glasses, celebrating their future, while my daughter's future was being decided by a surgeon's scalpel less than 20 minutes away. When the surgeon finally walked out at 7:30 in the evening, his face etched with exhaustion, I thought I would collapse. He told me she was stable, but the procedure had been incredibly complex. I sobbed with the relief so heavy it felt like a physical weight. I fumbled for my phone to update the chat, typing with shaking fingers that she was out, she was okay, thank God. I sent it and waited. 10 minutes, an hour, 3 hours, nothing. My message sat there, marked read by all of them. That silence was the most definitive statement of my value I had ever received. To them, we were not family. We were just an inconvenient interruption to their lifestyle. In my professional world, we call this a toxic asset. As a wealth manager for the ultra-high net worth families of Boston, I spend my days identifying liabilities before they can sink a multi-million-dollar portfolio. But for 5 years, I had been ignoring the biggest liability in my own life. I had been the silent investor in my family's version of success, footing the bill for a lifestyle they never earned and did not even respect. I remembered when Tyler was 24 and came to me crying about a $25,000 misunderstanding with some very dangerous people. I paid it off quietly, telling myself it was a one-time rescue. Then there was the luxury condo in the Seaport district for my parents. I purchased the property and kept the title solely in my name, allowing them to live there as guests while I handled the monthly installments because my father, Gregory, had wiped out his retirement on business opportunities that were really just elaborate scams. I was the safety net they jumped into every time they fell. And after a while, they stopped even trying to stay on the wire. I sat in the lumpy vinyl recliner by Madison's bed, the only light in the room coming from the rhythmic green glow of her heart monitor. I opened Instagram, my thumb hovering over the search bar. There it was. Destiny's profile was filled with stories from the engagement of the year. My breath hitched as I realized where they were. They were not just at a bar anymore. They were in my home. Through the screen, I watched them move through my living room in high definition. The smart lights, a system I had spent thousands to install, were set to a pulsing neon party mode I had programmed for Madison's last birthday. They were drinking from my private collection of vintage wine, laughing as they spilled red drops on my ivory rug. Tyler was holding Destiny close, shouting over the music about their upcoming trip to a Bali resort. while my mother, Patricia, was in the background showing off my designer kitchen to people I did not even recognize. The caption on the final post was "The Kill Shot." So grateful for a family that knows how to put their priorities first. Future looks bright. Blessed. They were using my space, my resources, and my sweat to celebrate my brother's milestone while my daughter was lying in a medically induced coma less than 5 miles away. They had not just forgotten us, they had actively moved into the vacuum our absence created. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for years, and now the account was empty. I felt a profound, icy calm settle over me. This was not a breakdown. It was a balance sheet, and it was time for reconciliation. Anger was not loud this time. It was clinical. I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop, the fan whirring softly in the quiet hospital room. I did not cry. I did not send a frantic text asking them to leave. I simply logged into my administrative portals. My laptop glowed with a different kind of sunrise, the kind made of facts, numbers, and quiet retribution. I began with the first account on my list. At exactly 2:15 a.m., while the hum of the hospital machines provided the only rhythm in the room, my phone buzzed with a notification that should have been a joke. It was a message from my father, Gregory. "No, how is Madison?" "No, are you holding up?" Just a subject line that read, "Urgent family commitment." He wrote that they had been talking to Tyler and Destiny at the party. Apparently, the venue they wanted in Bali required a non-refundable $10,000 deposit by the end of the week to secure the Sunset Terrace for their engagement gala. He told me that since I was the one with the excess liquidity, it was only right that I pitch in to ensure the family legacy looked its best. He ended the message with, "We're counting on you, Kayla. Do not let your brother down." I looked at my daughter, her head wrapped in bandages, her life hanging by a thread I had spent 13 hours praying would not snap. Then I looked back at the screen. I did not feel a surge of heat or a desire to scream. I felt a cold, crystalline clarity. In the world of wealth management, when a client refuses to see that they are bankrupt and continues to spend as if their credit is infinite, you do not keep advising them. You terminate the relationship. You liquidate the position. You cut your losses before the entire portfolio is dragged into the abyss. My fingers moved with surgical precision across the keys. I opened my primary checking account and initiated a wire transfer to my father's account. In the amount field, I typed $0.01. In the memo line, I wrote, "My final contribution to Tyler's future. Check your Wi-Fi." I hit send. I sat back and watched the transfer successful animation pulse on the screen. It felt like the first deep breath I had taken in years. I realized then that I had fallen into a psychological trap I often warned my clients about, the trap of cruel normalization. By being the constant provider, the one who always fixed the misunderstandings and smoothed over the rough patches, I had inadvertently trained my family to stop seeing me as a human being with my own needs, fears, and tragedies. I had become a utility to them, like the electricity that keeps the lights on, or the water that flows from the tap. You do not thank the faucet when it gives you water. You only notice it when it stops working. And even then, your first emotion is not concern for the pipes, it is irritation at the inconvenience. To Gregory, Patricia, and Tyler, my bank account was not a result of my hard work. It was a communal resource they were entitled to harvest. They had normalized my exploitation to the point where my daughter's brain surgery was not a family crisis, it was just a distraction that might make me late with their next payment. The Bank of Kayla was officially closed. I was not just stopping the money, I was withdrawing the security they had used as a weapon against me. I had been their silent investor for too long, and now I was calling in every debt, every favor, and every ounce of access I had ever granted them. This was not revenge. It was a long overdue accounting, and the balance was zero. The first strike was silent, executed with the same cold precision I used to rebalance a failing portfolio. I did not need to be in the room to take control. I held the digital keys to every luxury they enjoyed. I logged into the central hub for the Seaport condo, the home I paid for, in the neighborhood I chose. Boston winters are unforgiving, and tonight the wind was whipping off the harbor with a lethal chill. I navigated to the climate control settings. With 2 clicks, I overrode the local settings and dropped the temperature to 55 degrees, the absolute minimum required to keep the pipes from freezing. I could almost feel the warmth draining out of my ivory-colored living room as the smart vents went silent. Next was the lighting. I did not just turn them off, I disabled the manual overrides. From my laptop in the hospital, I plunged my own home into total darkness while they were in the middle of their stolen celebration. Then came the kill shot for their blessed lifestyle, the internet. I canceled the premium high-speed fiber account and deauthorized every device. No more streaming for my father's stocks, no more alignment posts for Destiny, and no more Wi-Fi for Tyler to browse Bali resorts. I was not done. I opened my corporate banking portal and looked at the family emergency card, the one Tyler used as his personal slush fund. I saw a pending charge for $742 at a boutique wine shop downtown. I clicked report lost or stolen and permanently deactivated the card. Then I did the same for my parents' authorized user accounts. In less than 12 minutes, I had stripped them of every convenience I had spent 5 years providing. I did not have to wait long for the feedback loop to begin. My phone, which had been a silent testament to their indifference during Madison's surgery, suddenly came to life like a hornet's nest. My mother, Patricia, called first. I let it ring. Then my father. Then Tyler. The notifications for the smart home doorbell started pinging. They were standing on the mat, probably confused why their biometric codes were not working. When I finally answered my father's sixth call, the explosion was instantaneous. He did not ask about Madison's recovery. He did not ask why I was at the hospital. He screamed that the power was glitching, the internet was out, and his card had been declined in front of Destiny's friends. He called me a bitter, jealous child and demanded I fix it immediately. I waited for him to run out of breath, my voice remaining as flat as a death certificate. I told him that there was no glitch. I told him that I had simply stopped paying for a subscription that provided no return on investment. I informed him that the Bank of Kayla was closed for the season and it was never reopening. The rage on the other end was incoherent, but I did not listen. I simply hung up and initiated the next phase of the divestment. I had been the safety net for too long. Now, I was going to watch them learn exactly what happens when there is nothing left to catch them. In my profession, you do not look for emotions, you look for anomalies. Data is the only thing that does not lie when people are smiling to your face. While Madison slept, her breath hitching occasionally in a way that made my heart ache, I logged into the one account I thought was untouchable, her educational trust fund. I had set this up years ago, a fortress of compound interest and diversified assets meant to ensure my daughter would never have to rely on the generosity of people like my family. I navigated to the transaction history, and the numbers on the screen turned the air in my lungs to ice. A withdrawal of $160,000. It had happened 48 hours ago, while I was holding Madison's hand in the surgical recovery unit. The request had been made via a secure digital portal, authorized by what looked like my own encrypted electronic signature. My hands did not shake. They became efficient. I pulled the metadata for the authorization. The IP address used to sign the document was not mine. It originated from the smart hub in the Seaport condo. But to access that specific trust portal, you needed a secondary security key, a physical code I had written down in only one place. A small, locked notebook kept in the safe at my parents' home for emergencies. The realization hit with the force of a physical blow, yet I processed it like a forensic accountant. My mother, Patricia, was the only other person who had the combination to that safe. She had not just been a passive enabler. She had been a co-conspirator. She had handed over the keys to my daughter's future to an identity thief. I dug deeper into the transfer logs. The funds had been moved to an escrow account under a holding company name I did not recognize. A quick search of public records revealed the truth. Tyler and Destiny were in the final stages of closing on a house of their own. They were using Madison's surgery as a window of opportunity to embezzle her life savings, betting that I would be too preoccupied with grief to notice the ledger until the deal was closed. This was not a family disagreement anymore. It was a felony. Identity theft, embezzlement, and conspiracy. My mother had secretly agreed to help Destiny forge my name to rob her own grandchild before she even had a chance to wake up. I looked at Madison, so small and vulnerable under the hospital sheets. I realized that for years, I had been protecting my family from the world, but I had failed to protect my daughter from them. The safety net was gone. I reached into my bag and pulled out my professional contacts list. I did not call my mother. I did not call Tyler. I called a white-collar criminal attorney I had worked with on a fraud case last year. The time for administrative accounting was over. This was a criminal liquidation. I was going to ensure that every signature they faked and every dollar they stole would become the bars of the cell they were building for themselves. The sound of 4 sets of footsteps echoing down the sterile hospital hallway told me the animals had finally reached the end of their leash. Gregory led the way, his face a dark shade of mahogany, while Tyler followed close behind, blustering about his and the Bali disaster. Destiny was perfectly composed in a sharp white blazer, her expression a mask of toxic concern, and my mother, Patricia, trailed them all, her eyes red from what I knew were performative tears. I did not even stand up from the recliner. I did not greet them, and I certainly did not apologize. I simply placed a protective hand on Madison's arm and waited for the noise to start. Gregory started first, shouting that I had humiliated him and that the family was under attack because of my tantrums. Tyler chimed in, demanding the $10,000 for the Bali deposit and an extra $2,000 for the emotional distress I had caused his fiancée. I let them speak until the air in the room felt heavy with their entitlement. Then I held up a single manila folder. The silence that followed was sudden and sharp. I looked directly at Destiny, whose eyes went stone cold the moment she saw the logo of the private investigation firm on the cover. I told them that we needed to discuss the anomalies in my ledger. Specifically, the unauthorized withdrawal of $160,000 from Madison's educational trust. Tyler looked confused, but Destiny's mask finally cracked into a snarl of pure reptilian rage. I laid out the facts like a closing statement in a courtroom. The forged electronic signature, the metadata tracing the withdrawal back to the Seaport condo, and the secondary security key that only my mother could have provided from the safe. Patricia gasped, reaching for the bed rail, but I pulled Madison's hand away before she could touch it. It is a phenomenon I see often in my line of work, the illusion of power in a hollow wallet. Tyler and Destiny truly believed they were the architects of a new empire, but their authority was a borrowed luxury, a cheap mask made of my sweat and my daughter's future. They were so blinded by their own arrogance that they forgot a fundamental rule of finance. When the collateral is a lie, the entire structure collapses the moment the truth is audited. They were not powerful. They were just loud. I handed Gregory the final document in the folder, not a check, but a voluntary surrender of occupancy agreement. I made it clear that while a formal eviction in Boston could take months, a felony arrest warrant for stealing $160,000 takes only hours. If they signed and vacated the condo within 24 hours, I would delay the criminal filing. If not, they could wait for the sheriff in handcuffs. I told them that my white-collar criminal attorney was already filing the reports for identity theft and embezzlement. Tyler collapsed into a chair, realizing that without my money, he was nothing but an unemployed child in an expensive suit. I told them to leave my sight and my daughter's room immediately, or the police would expedite their departure. As they shambled out, the silence they left behind was the most expensive gift I had ever given myself. Madison's recovery was the only miracle I ever needed to see. It took 5 long months of physical therapy and quiet endurance, but she fought her way back to the world with a strength that put my entire family to shame. While she was relearning how to navigate her life, I was busy liquidating the remnants of mine. I forced the sale of the Seaport condo, reclaiming every dollar of the equity I had built over years of invisible sacrifice. The legal fallout was swift and appropriately cold. My parents did not go to prison. My attorney negotiated a settlement that required full restitution to Madison's trust fund in exchange for dropping the criminal charges. But the price they paid was their lifestyle. Gregory and Patricia were forced to move into a crumbling 1-bedroom rental house on the far outskirts of the city, where the only thing they have to manage is their own regret. Tyler, the man who once mocked me while sipping my vintage wine, is now working 12-hour shifts at a dusty shipping warehouse just to pay off the legal fees and the massive credit card debts Destiny opened in his name before she vanished. 2 months later, Madison and I were standing in the heart of the Colosseum in Rome, She walked slowly, leaning on me occasionally for balance, but her stride was steady as we explored the ancient stone. The Italian sun was warm on our faces, and for the first time in my life, my phone was silent because I wanted it to be, not because I was being ignored. I watched my daughter laugh as she took a photo of a stray cat lounging on an ancient stone, her spine straight and her spirit finally free. I realized then that the greatest inheritance I could ever give her was not a trust fund or a luxury home. It was the example of a mother who finally knew her own worth. We were not just on vacation. We were starting a life where our happiness was no longer a subsidized resource for people who did not love us. Looking out at the Roman horizon, I realized that I was not just breathing for the first time, I was finally present in my own life. I have come to realize that for some of us, family is not a safe harbor. It is an anchor that keeps us from ever reaching the shore. I spent years acting as a safety net for people who never once checked to see if I was tired of holding the weight. If you are the one who always provides, the one who always fixes things, the one who stays silent to keep the peace, I want you to know that your value is not tied to your utility. You are not a business transaction, and your worth is not a line item on someone else's balance sheet. Forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation, and it certainly does not mean staying in a house that only sees you as a resource. Sometimes, the most profound act of love you can perform is the act of walking away, to protect your own peace and the future of the people who actually love you back. I used to think that being the invisible daughter was just my role to play. Now, I know that choosing to shine my own light was the only way to save myself and my daughter. I did not lose my family. I just finally stopped paying for a subscription to a life where I did not exist. If you have ever felt like the invisible one in your own family, please know that you are seen here. If you have ever had to be the safety net for people who never deserved you, please share your story in the comments. Do not forget to subscribe so we can continue to share these stories of awakening and strength. I wish you the courage to set your boundaries and the freedom to find your own joy, just as Madison and I have finally found ours.